Tonya Harding has carried the burden of Tonya's fame for a long time, something that very few sportsmen ever face. It seems like the scandal, rumors, and unending headlines followed her everywhere she went, even to those who never watched figure skating. The story has been told so many times that the actual events are starting to blend together. But now that she's 54 years old, Tonya has decided to tell it like it is. Her words evoke more than just a shocking event. It recreates that night and her in our minds. Job and personal life. Portland, Oregon is the site of Tonya Maxine Harding's birth on November 12, 1970. Her folks, LaVonna Golden and Albert Harding, raised her, who, despite caring for her, barely scraped by. Tonya's dad was a truck driver, an apartment complex manager, and the owner of a bait and tackle store, among other things. However, his health issues often made it difficult for him to maintain steady employment. Due to financial constraints, Tonya's mom, LaVonna, who worked as a server, embroidered her figure skating costumes by hand. Even though she grew up in a poor family, Tonya's love for skating was obvious. Skating lessons with Coach Diane Rawlinson began when she was just 3 years old. Tonya had a challenging upbringing. Her testimony revealed that her mother had a history of verbal and physical abuse against her. At one point, while Tonya was roller skating, LaVonna admitted to hitting her. Even while some have said that Tonya exaggerated the dramatic nature of her true story. Nothing changed. Tonya had a tough time at home, and she quickly found solace in skating. Beyond skating, she had a number of other interests, including hunting, learning car mechanics from her dad, and even trying her hand at drag racing. Her parents filed for a divorce when she was 16 years old, and in 1987, not long after that, she decided to skate full-time instead than attend high school, although she did get her GED in 1988. Throughout the 1980s, she began to rise up the ranks of the competition, eventually placing third in 1989 after having finished fifth in 1987 and 1988 and sixth in 1986 at the U.S. Championships. She made her presence known in October of that year when she won Skate America. In 1991, her breakthrough came to fruition. Tonya became the first American woman to ever land a triple axel at the U.S. Championships. No one had ever landed such a jump before. She achieved some of the greatest technical marks ever at the event and landed 7 triple leaps in her routine. Not 1, not 2, but 3. She placed second that year at the World Championships after Christy Yamaguchi and before Nancy Kerrigan, after repeating the triple axel. At Skate America in September 1991, Tonya achieved another milestone when she became the first female to double axel in a short program. Who can be the first to undertake double duty in 2 different competitions at the same time? Unfortunately, she never had another competitive success with the jump down following that incredible year. She kept going even though her career started to fall. In 1992, she placed third at the U.S. Championships due to an ankle injury. Later that year, she competed in the Winter Olympics, where she placed fourth. Tonya Harding had already cemented her place in figure skating lore as one of the sport's most groundbreaking competitors when her later seasons were less successful. In the midst of Tonya Harding's blossoming skating career, her off-ice life was tainted by the traumatic recollections of betrayal and tragedy in her family. Her own family was the source of one of the darkest chapters. Tonya detailed her ordeal with Chris Davison, her half-brother, in her official biography, The Tonya Tapes. She discovered that Davison had subjected her to relentless abuse and agony as a child, adding to the difficulties in her already difficult home life with her domineering mother. At this point, Tonya could take it no longer. Davison was apprehended and served a short sentence in prison in 1986, when Tonya was still a teenager, after his aggressive and harassing behavior became intolerable. However, the anguish he caused Tonya never went away. The reaction from her parents was even worse. Tonya asserted that her parents did not fully support her, but instead downplayed or ignored Davison's actions, advising her not to press charges. This was a sad setback for a young girl whose unstable home life made it difficult for her to achieve her Olympic dreams. Then tragedy struck in 1988. The death of Chris Davison in a hit-and-run accident remains a mystery. Although the death would have a devastating effect on most families, Tonya's emotions were more nuanced. Davison was the only person she truly despised and didn't think deserved forgiveness. She admitted in an interview from 1994. The depth of the wounds was revealed by those expressions, and the extent to which her perception of him had been shaped by the abuse. While Tonya's skating career and scandal got all the media attention, this shadowy side of her life shows the personal challenges she endured before her skating career and scandal became public. That assault that stunned the entire globe. The sport of figure skating underwent a radical transformation on January 6, 1994. Reigning champion Nancy Kerrigan was severely attacked after finishing a practice session at Detroit's Cobo Arena, only one day before the ladies' singles event at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships. The assault occurred in a normally quiet hallway, yet it became international headline news in only a few hours. A shadowy figure hurried over to where Nancy was hiding behind the curtain. Shane Stanton was his name. Swinging both hands with a 21-inch telescoping baton, he cracked Nancy square above the right knee. The objective was straightforward but brutal: to harm her seriously enough to prohibit her from competing in the Nationals. Additionally, and most importantly, from future participation in the Winter Olympics. It was horrible right then. In the aftermath, cameras captured Nancy yelling in pain as she clutched her leg and uttered the terrifying words, "Why me?" The TV station played that footage nonstop. To everyone's surprise, Stant was not operating alone. A week and a half following the attack, on January 14th, he turned himself into the FBI and confirmed his guilt. In their investigation, the authorities discovered that Stant and his uncle, Derek Smith, had received payment to carry out the task. Their employer? Sean Eckhart, who claimed to be Tonya Harding's bodyguard, and Jeff Gallioli, who was her ex-husband. To give Harding a fighting chance, they planned to remove Kerrigan from the race. There was an initial lapse in execution of the strike. At first, Stant had gone to Massachusetts in search of Kerrigan, but he had failed. He rode the bus for more than 20 hours to Detroit, where he carried out the attack, refusing to be defeated. Nancy was forced to withdraw from the championships due to severe bruising, even though her leg was not fractured. One of the sport's most promising athletes was unable to defend her title in the United States, which was a tragic outcome for her. Tonya Harding won the U.S. Championship the following week, on January 8th, a mere 2 days following Kerrigan's injury. Harding had risen to the top after Kerrigan's departure. At the end of the selection process, both women were chosen to compete for the U.S. in the 1994 Winter Olympics. Among the most notorious scandals in sports history was the assault, as a result of both the savagery and the plot. In the midst of a once beautiful sport, it became entangled in scandal, treachery, and global media scrutiny. Although their lives had been very different up until that point, for some, it was the turning point that ensured Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan's names would always be associated. Conducting interviews, making arrests, and denying charges. Following the stunning assault on Nancy Kerrigan, Tonya Harding and those close to her were the center of attention. Harding gave a live interview to KYN-TV in her hometown of Portland, Oregon, on January 11, 1994, just 5 days following the assault. During the interview, the reporter asked the burning issue that everyone was wondering: was she or someone close to her engaged in the plotting of the attack? Tonya finished her declaration with words that sounded both defiant and defensive. "No one controls my life but me. If there's something in there that I don't like, I'm going to change it." At the same time, she assured that she had already spoken with FBI agents in Detroit and Portland. Harding hesitated before confessing, "I have definitely thought about it." The presence of Jeff Gallioli, her former husband, standing behind the camera in her line of vision for the interview added to the awkwardness of the moment. Throughout the course of the inquiry by the agency, arrests of Harding's bodyguard Sean Eckhart and Shane Stant's uncle Derek Smith the following day, on January 13th, further muddied the waters of the story. The assault has direct ties to both guys, from Detroit to Portland. A criminal case was developing surrounding the narrative that had shocked the skate world. On January 14th, the U.S. Figure Skating Association, USFSA, decided it was time to make a statement. Officials said nothing more than, "We will deal only with the facts," when asked if Harding's Olympic team status would be affected by Eckhart's arrest. Although Harding had not been officially charged with anything, suspicions concerning her were growing by the day. While Harding and Gallioli did hire separate counsel, those attorneys made it clear that their clients were collaborating with the police. The two even made public appearances before reporters on January 15th, though they avoided answering any direct questions on the matter. When Harding's lawyer held a news conference on January 16th and gave a prepared statement, he took it a step further. The document was Harding's formal denial of involvement in the plot to have Kerrigan killed. The following night, Tonya made an effort to return to routine. She accompanied her coaches to the rink for practice. Even though she spoke with the reporters who came along, it was her skating that briefly took the spotlight. Harding managed to land a triple axel despite the raging storm around her, proving once and for all that she was still one of the top skaters in the world. The confession of Tonya Harding and the media storm. Tonya Harding was a daily skater at the Clackamas Town Center rink in Oregon as the 1994 Winter Olympics drew near. However, these training sessions were no longer ordinary. Instead of skaters and coaches, tens of thousands of spectators and dozens of reporters flocked to the mall to witness her performance. Everywhere she went, cameras were following, turning her Olympic training into a public spectacle. The hardest day of Harding's life thus far came on January 18, 1994. During the interrogation, Harding and her lawyers were joined by the district attorney and the FBI. Over 10 hours passed during what was supposed to be an interview. In the beginning, Harding said he was unaware of the plot to have Nancy Kerrigan killed. After 8 hours of questioning, her attorney made a statement announcing the breakup with her ex-husband, Jeff Gillooly. "I still think Jeff is innocent of any wrongdoing," Harding said in his statement. "My best wishes are with him." However, a change in fortunes was imminent. After the fact, the Seattle Times reported that Harding's account started to fall apart. An FBI agent finally told her that they knew she lied after she denied it for hours. With no way out, Harding snapped, "I hope everyone gets it." She confessed towards the conclusion of the session. "I'm going to spill the beans to someone I care deeply about. Now I know that Jeff is implicated. Excuse me." Next day, on January 19th, Gillooly turned himself in to the FBI. There were rumors that he had begun collaborating with the authorities and giving information about the conspiracy a week later, on January 27th, which could have further implicated Harding. Also, Harding tried to put on a brave face for the public. On January 20th, Harding made an appearance on Primetime with Diane Sawyer, adamantly denying any wrongdoing. Several friends, including Harding's presenter Stephanie Quintero, spoke about how distraught Tonya was and how she couldn't believe Jeff could have been unfaithful. Harding ended up holding her own news conference. She apologized for the assault on Kerrigan and reiterated her admiration for her competitor as she spoke from a prepared statement. Despite her denials, she did admit that she had been aware of the scheme before the attack, but had neglected to submit new information. "It is not a crime," as she put it, to fail to submit this information quickly. Strictly speaking, it was not illegal in Oregon or most states to simply conceal knowledge of a crime. However, Harding's reputation was completely destroyed in the eyes of the public. The media frenzy intensified. Time, Sports Illustrated, and Newsweek all included stories about the affair by January. The narrative went beyond skating when both Harding and Kerrigan were selected to compete for Team USA at the Lillehammer Olympics. It quickly became one of the decade's most prominent tabloid extravaganzas. The path to Norway, hearings, and guilty pleas. More details about the attack on Nancy Kerrigan became public knowledge as the investigation continued. Tonya Harding's ex-husband, Jeff Gillooly, entered a guilty plea on February 1, 1994. In exchange for his evidence against the remaining perpetrators, the prosecutors promised him a lower sentence. Gillooly was given a 2-year prison term in July of that year. He formally apologized to Nancy Kerrigan in front of the judge. Even he himself admitted that his sincere apologies were insincere. Not only was Gillooly penalized, but so were others. Along with Harding, Harding's former bodyguard Sean Eckhart pled guilty to racketeering. Concurrently, both the actual attacker, Shane Stant, and his uncle Derek Smith, who helped with money transfers and provided the getaway car, pled guilty to second-degree assault conspiracy. Donald Lunder, the judge in this instance, elaborated on the gravity of the crime. He stressed how lucky Kerrigan was. Much more catastrophic harm may have come to her. Eckhart would pass away in 2007, concluding yet another chapter in the intricate narrative many years later. Skateboarding as a whole responded as the courts dealt with the attackers. On February 5, 1994, the U.S. According to the United States Figure Skating Association, USFSA, Harding may have broken the rules of sportsmanship. Her own FBI tapes demonstrated that she failed to disclose what she knew following the attack, contradicting her earlier claims that she was unaware of the conspiracy. Harding was officially charged with lying due to her silence and other pieces of evidence such as phone records, witness testimony, and even scrawled notes found in a Portland pub trash can. The president of the USFSA, Claire Ferguson, did not immediately suspend Harding despite the suggestion of a disciplinary hearing by the organization. Had they done so, Harding would have likely taken legal action in accordance with the 1978 Amateur Sports Act, which might have prolonged the process and granted her permission to participate at the Olympics. On the contrary, she was given 30 days to respond to the accusations, so the drama would continue far beyond the confines of the courtroom. Reporters were also following Harding about Portland at all times. On February 7th, she made national headlines after a photo of her frantically rushing barefoot through a parking lot went viral, all in an effort to stop the tow truck from taking away her illegally parked car. Her interview with Connie Chung took place on February 10th, just a few days after that. "I never did anything to harm Jeff," she said to avoid answering questions about Gillooly. "My only actions were those of a protector and defender of him." That wasn't all Chung had to say. She had really made reservations to go to Norway on the same airline as Harding, with a February 15th departure to Oslo. Chung claims that if the scandal hadn't occurred, she would never have gone to Norway, risking it all on the ice and seeing what happens. Perhaps figure skating has never encountered anything like the 1994 Lillehammer Winter Olympics in Norway. During a practice session in the Hamar Olympic Amphitheater on February 17th, weeks after the assault that startled the world, Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan were back on the same ice. Packed into the stadium were about 400 members of the media, each poised to capture the event on film. After the fact, Olympic gold medalist Scott Hamilton said that the whole thing was more of a tabloid story than a sporting one. There was a stunning proclamation made by Kerrigan that day. When Shane Stan assaulted her in Detroit, she was dressed identically in her white costume. Reporters couldn't help but notice, and Kerrigan later clarified that it was intentional, explaining that she used humor to restore composure. It was a demonstration of her power. Even as her life spun out of control, the entire globe glued to their televisions as the competition commenced. One of the largest television audiences in U.S. history tuned in to watch the women's technical program on February 23rd. Harding had hoped for a different result. A tragic incident occurred on February 25th during the free skate when one of her skate laces snapped, giving the impression that she was distressed. Midway through her performance, she stopped what she was doing and pleaded with the judges to let her finish. The damage had already been done when they gave their consent. Harding finished in 9th place. Taking 2nd place, just behind Ukraine's Oksana Bile, was Kerrigan, who had miraculously recovered from her injuries and competed beautifully. After Lillehammer, Harding's situation deteriorated further. On March 16, 1994, she entered a guilty plea, standing trial for the felony offense of conspiracy to hinder the prosecution in a Portland courtroom. Harding had already lied to the FBI, used phone calls as cover, and provided fictional narratives by that point. She avoided jail time, but was ordered to serve 3 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and pay a fine of $100,000 as part of her plea deal. She was also ordered to pay back her legal bills and give $50,000 to Special Olympics Oregon. Even worse for Harding, the deal stipulated that she had to resign from her position as a United States Senator. Figure Skating Association, disqualifying her from future competitions. At the Olympics, Tonya Harding hoped to find redemption. They ended up being the means by which she met her own demise. Scandals, accusations, and an enduring prohibition. Even after Tonya Harding admitted guilt in March 1994, the story was far from over. Even though she managed to avoid jail time, the consequences on her career and finances were devastating. Harding took home almost $600,000, and Nike co-founder Phil Knight put up $25,000 to aid with her ever-increasing legal bills, as per the conditions of a media package from Inside Edition. Although her attorney Robert Weaver expressed relief that she would not be going to jail thanks to the plea deal, he also noted that her skating career was still in its infancy. In June, a disciplinary hearing was held by the U.S. Figure Skating Association, USFSA, because it was unclear whether Harding was involved in the attack before the national championships. They went so far as to discuss taking away her 1994 national crown. After 2 months of inquiry, a grand jury in Portland handed down a formal indictment on March 21st, heightening tensions. Witnesses included Sean Eckhart's friends and associates, as well as Harding's instructor and choreographer. According to the indictment, Harding was aware of the conspiracy from the beginning, who may have aided the attack's funding with USFSA cash. But her March 16th plea deal prevented any further criminal charges. June was the month when Harding's fate in figure skating was practically sealed. After spending 2 long days reviewing Harding's bank records, plea confessions, FBI reports, and phone data, the USFSA disciplinary committee finally reached a decision. The chairperson stated their decision based on the preponderance of the evidence on June 30th. The attack was known to Harding in advance. Even though it didn't meet the stringent requirements of a criminal court, the evidence presented in the civil case proved beyond a reasonable doubt that fairness, good sportsmanship, and ethical conduct were completely disregarded. There was a lack of Harding's presence during the hearing. Although the decision was upsetting, Weaver later said that it was not unexpected. However, the punishment was devastating. She lost her status as U.S. champion in 1994 and is therefore ineligible to compete in or coach at any USFSA tournaments. As a competitor, Harding's career was virtually ended by the ruling. She was theoretically eligible to compete in professional tournaments, but the incident had made her irrelevant. Both the promoters and the other contestants avoided her since they didn't want her associated with their events. Harding was on the outside looking in as her future in figure skating was canceled during a moment when the sport was experiencing unprecedented popularity. Coming up next, interviews and shifting viewpoints. Even after all these time had passed since the controversy, questions regarding what happened with Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan persisted. Specials shown on Fox and CBS recounted the story just before the 1998 Winter Olympics. In an interview with Harry Smith for CBS, Harding reiterated her 1994 denial that she was involved in the plot to attack Kerrigan. To find out Kerrigan's thoughts on the matter, Smith turned to her first. Kerrigan proudly displayed Harding's 1994 FBI transcripts and asserted her belief that Tonya possessed more knowledge than what she was revealing. At the same time, breaking the ice was Fox's special. The ladies of 1994 returned, this time with James Brown at the helm. Harding, Kerrigan, and Jeff Stone, formerly known as Jeff Gillooly, were all interviewed for it. In an unexpected turn of events, Gillooly admitted that his own sentence had been appropriate and said that he wasn't furious that Harding had spared prison time. He said that Harding was just somewhat involved, but she mentioned that she probably still had remorse haunting her. A two-part interview with Harding and Kerrigan was the special's most talked-about feature. In their own lives, the two women wished for tranquility and joy. While Harding appreciated the chance to apologize again on a personal level, Kerrigan expressed her hope that Harding might take heart from her mistakes and move on with her life. The Tonya Tapes, Harding's autobiography published in 2008, brought the topic back a decade later. The book claims that she admitted to wanting to contact the FBI in 1994, but resisted due to Gillooly's alleged death threats. She went forward with the shocking claim that two guys, including Gillooly, held her at gunpoint. Gillooly strongly refuted the accusation, calling it absurd and foolish. Even though he was still going as Jeff Stone at the time, Deadspin interviewed Gillooly in 2013. His foolishness had ended her skating career, he said, but he still denied assaulting Harding. He said that, after the controversy, he had it bad, but he felt bad that Harding had become the punchline to so many jokes. On the other hand, he kept calling her a fantastic skater. The topic of the controversy has subsided by 2014, according to Kerrigan. She stated her acceptance of Harding's prior apologies in an interview with sportscaster Bob Costas. It was time to move on, Kerrigan said, since they each had families of their own. She had previously expressed her best wishes to Tonya, expanding on the idea that living in the now, rather than dwelling on the past, was what life was all about. Tonya Harding's life likewise saw some unexpected twists and turns once her skating career came to an end. The release of a home film of her and Jeff Gillooly from 1991 catapulted her back into the spotlight in 1994. Penthouse bought the rights to the entire video and made it accessible to the public after television stations showed clips from the tape. Even though Harding and Gillooly received payment for the sale, it added to the scandal that plagued her already difficult year. It was also the year that Harding entered the entertainment industry. She worked as a manager with wrestlers like Eddie Guerrero at a Portland professional wrestling show. The Golden Blades, a band she tried to start, had a dismal debut performance and were booed off the stage. Breakaway, an action film she was cast in 1994 and released 2 years later, failed to garner any popularity for her. As time went on, Harding made guest appearances on shows including The Weakest Link and went on to commentate on True TV's World's Dumbest. Harding held conventional employment in addition to his work in the media. Her many talents included working as a painter, a sales clerk at Sears, and a welder. She went on to paint and build decks. A direct auto insurance commercial featuring her aired in 2019. The most surprising change was when she entered the ring for boxing. She triumphed in a celebrity boxing bout against Paula Jones in 2002. She turned professional a year later, but her match with Samantha Browning was a close one. After this, Harding fought a total of 6 times, achieving a win-loss record of 3. Some in the audience thought her effort was admirable, but she encountered unfriendly reactions on occasion. While cheering for her opponents, spectators booed her. Asthma cut short her professional career after a few years. Harding showed endurance despite continuous change, even though she did not find the same level of success as when skating. She persisted to try with other roads. The life of Tonya Harding is an emotional roller coaster of achievements, controversies, and heartbreak. She became famous for more than simply her skating. The scandals that surrounded her also helped to shape her reputation. Her story exemplifies how swiftly the sensation of celebrity can transform from a source of joy to one of scorn. You can't help but love or judge her. Tonya Harding's legacy will live on long after the figure skating community has moved on. If you found this video entertaining, please consider subscribing for more content like this one.